We are live here because Santa is in our neighborhood. Say hi, Santa. Santa? Santa? Is he coming?
Santa coming.
He's coming.
Okay, so I thought about doing this video over the past few days. By now, I'm sure you have all heard about the Watts attempting to quote-unquote cash in on the payable death benefits related to Shanann, Bella, and Cece. But of course, first things first, the following information is not to be used as legal advice. I am simply providing you information from a few different sources, which can be found in the description box below. In addition to my personal and professional experience, not related to the Watts case, but related to similar situations. I also want to be sure to point out that although I'm talking about this situation, that does not mean I agree with what has happened or what is going on. I simply wanted to bring you the information from my personal and professional experience. Every single state and county is different, and things can change daily. As always, please be sure to do your own research so that you can come to an educated opinion and conclusion for yourself. This information is being put out there to answer some questions I frequently come across, in addition to educate and explain the process and why this is happening. I know we all have our opinions on the Watts case, and quite frankly, mine has never changed. I hope this information that is coming to light is helpful and can help you understand just one reason why our current system is broken. Our system needs change, and I can't help but wonder, if I could just present the right information in the right manner and start an uproar with the right people, maybe things will eventually change. I'd also like to hear what you all think about this topic and your thoughts on what has transpired due to these payable benefits. Just leave a comment below. I'm also interested in hearing about your current true crime obsessions, so drop those below as well. And lastly, if you could do us just one big favor, if you like this video, we'd appreciate a share and a like so we can help reach the right people at the right time. Thank you in advance. We appreciate it so much. So anyway, here goes nothing. I suppose you could say one of my many trades of the jack just so happens to be estates and probating those estates. I actually did this for many years with many different states, but as luck would have it, I guess you could say, I actually worked hand in hand with the state of Colorado on hundreds, if not thousands of cases. These cases mostly involved assets from a loved one's death. With that being said, I couldn't help but dig a little further into the most recent Watts fiasco that involves some sort of benefits policy, like an accidental benefits policy. Nothing really accidental about this case, but apparently under this plan and the benefit type and the policy type, there were benefits that Chris had through his job Anadarko that were payable in this instance. I'm going to try and break this down for you all the easiest way I know how. In general, there are two primary reasons why Chris Watts would be unable to benefit from the estate or estates of Shanann, Bella, and or Cece. The biggest one is the Slayer Law. The Slayer Law pretty much just doesn't allow anyone who has been convicted of a crime such as this to benefit from their death in a case such as this where benefits are payable. And then the other one is insurance benefits exclusions. This can be similar to the Slayer Law in its way to prevent a murderer to benefit off of a victim's death. Not to mention the fact that per the court release documents, Chris Watts was alleged to have waived any interest in any insurance benefits and directed all such be paid to SW's estate. We all know who SW is, but that was just the verbatim language that was in that document. That same document also states verbatim, as CW has no living decedents and no spouse, any disclaimed share of an interest intestate estate would go to his surviving parents, Ronnie and Cindy Watts. If you pass away without a will, it's called intestate. I know they're kind of funny, testate, intestate, kind of makes you think of something, you know. Anyway, basically what they're saying is that the total funds payable by this benefit on behalf of the insured is a whopping $450,000 total. Now, I've also heard people talk about how they think this whole thing with Chris was a setup from the beginning, or maybe a plan rather, just to collect on these insurance benefits and start a supposed new life with his mistress, NK. If this was in fact the plan, just like everything else Chris seems to do, he didn't quite think that through. Did he really think he was going to get away with these crimes and run away off into the sunset with NK? Oh, come on, give me a break. Haven't people learned it can be quite difficult for someone to get away with a crime these days? Is it possible? Yeah. Does it happen? Yeah, it sure does. But it happens far less now than it ever did in our history. In this day and age, you can pretty much just bank on being caught on at least one or more cameras when leaving your house. Most people don't even realize that just a run down the street or a few houses away, there are cameras everywhere. They're outside and inside, both homes and businesses alike. They're on some traffic lights, signs, interstates, other cars now, dash cams, and more. So now back to this insurance claim. No matter what insurance company would have had this plan for the Watts, the insurance company couldn't just keep the money from this life insurance policy or accidental death and dismemberment policy, or pay themselves in this scenario even. If a claim is in fact payable, it has to be paid out. And as you can see, it was determined that this plan benefit was in fact payable. So one way or another, they have to pay out on that claim to the correct beneficiary or heir. Now, with that being said, if the correct person isn't located or can't be located to administer the funds to, then the insurance company has to hand over the money to the state. Usually this is a state that is on file for the insurance policy holder. In this instance, if the funds were to never have been given to anyone, eventually, which is usually within a few years or so, the funds would have had to have gone to the state of Colorado. At that point, the heirs and or the beneficiaries of a policy have to file for their assets through the state. Then in addition to anything they would have had to have done before, they have to prove that they are basically, or damn near convince these people that you get the money. Either way, the insurance company can't just keep a payable benefit policy like we talked about. It's either going to the rightful owner or it'll sit with the relevant state so they can collect interest on that money until someone claims those assets and proves to the state who they are. So basically the point is here, someone has to get the policy money even though Chris is in jail and has been convicted of offenses related to and causing the policy to become active and payable, if you catch my drift here. But I digress. Now, as shitty as the next part is about to seem, it's unfortunately the reality of the situation at hand. It's the reality of what I mostly consider a broken system. This is where many feel a change is needed. Based on Colorado's intestate succession, and as you can see here, the Rzuceks would get anything and everything from Shanann's estate, but that's just for Shanann. There are two other parties to this tragedy, and those two other parties have two sides of the family, the Rzuceks and the Watts. Both sets of grandparents are equally the grandparents of both Bella and Cece. The closest living relatives to both girls are all four of them. Not one of them more or less than the other in the eyes of the Colorado intestate laws. If the grandparents are also deceased in a case like this, then the aunts and uncles, and even cousins, could eventually claim the money. Now, here's where it can get confusing. Most of the time, the beneficiary is able to claim these assets without going through probate. But if the beneficiary is deceased or unable to claim those benefits, and there is no living backup beneficiaries, then some states will require you to go through the probate process to obtain these assets. If a probate case is still open, these assets are added in, as it appears happened here. If the estate is closed, some states require the probate case be reopened. I'm sure you get the drift and the point. Now, this is where the unpopular opinion comes in. Most people I have seen comment on this very topic are very upset that the Watts would even try to get any money, let alone actually obtain any of the money. As I mentioned earlier, all four grandparents are technically equally the closest heirs to both Bella and Cece. Each of the girls had a $75,000 payable benefit policy. In this instance, Colorado law technically would allow for each set of grandparents to get $75,000. Since the money appears to have been probated, there could have been costs taken out of any assets, including but not limited to these payable benefits policies. The same likely goes for if and when their house ever sells, unless it already has and I just completely missed something. But I suppose at this point in my life, it's entirely possible. Low-key F2020, right? Anyway, if the Watts home sells for an amount that pays off any legal and court fees associated with the foreclosure and the sale of the home through an auction or otherwise sale of the home, and the mortgage lien and other associated liens, if there are any, are paid off, then the proceeds would likely need to be probated into Shanann's estate. But the difference here is that Chris owned the house as well. At least that's my understanding. But he still can't profit off of the death of Shanann, as the Slayer's Law still applies. But this point could potentially, and that's a big potentially, be argued, as there could be a few possible arguments used here. But that's for another day entirely. I guess what I'm getting at is that since the payable benefits company appears to have paid the benefits to the estate of Shanann, a settlement was reached between both parties. The information has been sealed, so we'll likely never know the outcome of this settlement. But it is very possible that the Watts did in fact recover a decent-sized settlement from the life insurance policy benefits. As I mentioned, all 4 grandparents are technically equal grandparents to each of these girls. If $150,000 is divided up per both families and per both sets of grandparents, they'd each be getting $75,000 apiece. But again, that just depends on if there were any expenses that were paid out. So I just wanted to explain a little bit more and go into depth a little bit more as to why it's possible. I also want to encourage everyone to make sure that any and all of their own benefit policies have at least one beneficiary if possible, and a backup beneficiary. I also highly encourage anyone who has children and/or assets of any kind to consult with a legal professional to draft up a will that is right for you if you haven't already done so. That will can have clauses and stipulations that can prevent this type of situation in its entirety. That way, maybe this can't and won't happen again in the future. I know we all get busy, and life is hard as shit, especially right now, as is. But I promise you, doing these few things could potentially save your loved ones from even more heartbreak and stress if they were ever in a similar situation when they should only be grieving. So I hope that this wasn't too confusing. I hope this breaks it down for you, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, and as we mentioned before, please drop us a comment below if you liked this or if you have any comments or thoughts on this topic. We would also like to know your latest true crime obsession case, so put that in the comments below. And as always, we'll see y'all next time.